Hey, I'm Brandon. Welcome to Retro Archaeology. Finally back with another 007 recap video. Today, we're talking about On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And it's been 2.5 weeks since I watched this movie, finally getting around to recording this video. So what the heck have I been up to? I was supposed to watch every Bond movie in the month of July, and I barely scratched the surface. So life kind of happened. I had a week off work, had to redo the bathroom. It's something me and my wife have been wanting to tackle for a while. Finally got it done. Looks amazing. But that was a lot of work. We also painted our front door, and lo and behold, here we are 2.5 weeks later, and I'm finally ready to talk about On Her Majesty's Secret Service. So we're back at it. Let's get into this movie. I've got some personal feelings that I had going into this movie that I found completely changed after I watched On Her Majesty's Secret Service. But first, as tradition, we're going to just read the back of the box to ground ourselves in George Lazenby's one and only feature as 007. So this is the last Bond movie of the 60s, came in right at the end of the decade, 1969. 10 beautiful but deadly women, a madman more malevolent than any before, and the most resourceful hero in the modern world, all pitted together in an adventure that speeds from the coast of Portugal to the peaks of Switzerland. It can mean only one thing: Secret Agent 007 is once again on Her Majesty's Secret Service. Handsome, athletic, George Lazenby is Bond in this 6th 007 adventure. Tall, beautiful Diana Rigg is the woman who lands Spidum's most eligible bachelor. And Telly Savalas is the villain who plays havoc with not only their romance, but the very survival of the human race. With a gripping plot, a small regiment of beautiful heroines, and enough action for a score of adventure films, On Her Majesty's Secret Service is more than great Bond. It's a great escape into the world of action and adventure. This movie clocks in at 140 minutes. It's over 2 hours. It's almost 2.5 hours. This movie is no joke. I've got to say, of the CBS Fox covers so far, this is one of the coolest. You get gunfire, you get the awesome skiing chase scene in the Swiss Alps. I actually really like the poster art of this movie. But I first need to talk about just my position going into On Her Majesty's Secret Service. I'm going to admit I knew nothing about this movie. I don't remember this being on TV very often. I never saw anything George Lazenby, and I was kind of a Sean Connery loyalist. So this movie, I think, kind of gets swept under the rug in the sense that it's just a weird one-off. We had all the 60s belonging to Sean Connery. He comes back after this movie, does Diamonds Are Forever. We get a whole bunch of Roger Moore, and I never quite knew where this movie sat in the James Bond canon. So it comes in at the end of the 60s. George Lazenby, I guess, was a model, and he got the role of Bond after Sean Connery was a little bit burnt out. I mean, he was churning these movies out in the 60s. He wanted a ton of money. Studio didn't want to give it to him. So they decided, we're going to move on. We're going to recast Bond. So I think this movie is pivotal in the franchise because it's the first time they had to bring in a new actor to play 007 in a Eon James Bond movie, if you're not counting the spoof that is Casino Royale. And this is something that the Bond franchise has had to endure over its lifespan. Let's face it, people age. If you want to keep making Bond films, you're not going to have the same actor playing James Bond forever. I always had this preconceived notion that this was a little bit of a lesser Bond movie where they were still finding their way. They still had one foot in wanting Sean Connery to be Bond. The American, British, world public probably accepted that Sean Connery was James Bond. And you had a new actor who really had to establish themselves as the character. And I've got to say, after watching this movie, knowing nothing about it, thinking it was a bit of a lesser James Bond film in its film history, this movie kicks ass. It is directed so well. George Lazenby absolutely owns the role, has a ton of charisma, and one of the ways he actually was cast as James Bond was his physical prowess in a screen test for the fight scenes. These fight scenes go on, they're really well choreographed, they're very stylized, and I'm gonna say it, like, George is more physical in this movie than Sean Connery is in the fight scenes, at least, of all the previous James Bond films. And I think a big part of that is the style in the direction that is given to the fight scenes. So Peter Hunt, the director of this movie, it's the only Bond film that he would direct, but he was actually the editor of all the previous James Bond films. He steps into the director's role, so he already knows the franchise. I've got to say, that director, Peter, he put his stamp on this movie. There is fantastic lighting. There is really interesting, fast edits and cuts. There's sound effects in this one fight scene. There's all these fast cuts and zoom ins and these really cool metallic echoey sound effects that are placed during some of the impacts and punches. As I was watching On Her Majesty's Secret Service, it dawned on me that this movie actually kind of feels like a psychological horror Christmas movie. It is a bit of a menacing, brooding, tense, suspenseful James Bond feature, and all that really exacerbates when they get to the Swiss Alp compound. Bond is undercover as Hillary, and he's investigating the compound, walks into this dinner scene with all these lovely ladies that are just very outgoing and very happy, where the direction is just so fantastic. There's these overhead shots of the table, there's these reaction shots of these women eating their food and talking about how they used to hate that food item, but now they love it, and they're just digging into chicken and clearing their plates, and Bond's kind of looking around and trying to read the room. And you as an audience member, because of the direction, it just creates a sense of uneasiness, of uncertainty, of why are they acting so weird? What's with all the women hanging out in this room together and then gobbling up all this food in a very assertive manner and talking about their experiences? It's just a really kind of unsettling scene. The movie ends up getting a little bit more creepy in the Christmas tone when Bond wakes up and the lighting is dark. Blofeld feels really sinister in this.
Merry Christmas, 007.
I'm Sir Hilary Bray.
Oh, no, Mr. Bond. Respectable baronets from the College of Heralds do not seduce female patients in clinics. On the other hand, they do get their professional details right. The Beauchamp tombs are not in the Augsburg Cathedral, as you said.
Tell me that doesn't give off some horror vibes. We have the echo of the hypnotism voices kind of convincing and brainwashing the people in this compound to think and act a certain way, and it's all part of the big scheme to kind of release this big mind virus that's going to take control.
But all that is over now, for I have shown you how foolish it was, and your cure is nearly done. I have taught you to love chickens, to love their flesh, their voice. Yes, your cure is nearly done. And soon, you will go home to look after the chickens.
So I just like the psychological aspect of it. Extremely serious movie. On top of that, I think this Bond movie really brings in a romance element with the character of Tracy that just sticks to Bond and his relationship with that character really throughout the bulk of the film.
James. Darling, you're in trouble. What is it?
There's people out there.
He has a little bit of an aside with one of the women in the compound, but let's face it, like, Tracy is the love interest in this movie, and it starts with him saving her from suicide, and we get a really campy scene where Bond gets into a fight and he says, "This never happened to the other guy." They kind of break the third wall. Just through the script and through the direction of this movie, they've done a really good job giving a nod to the previous 5 Bond films. Even though we're passing the torch, so to speak, from Connery to Lazenby, there's, you know, that opening scene where Lazenby gets to say his name.
Good morning. My name's Bond. James Bond.
There's the soundtrack and the opening credits. And later there's this moment where Lazenby's getting ready to go on a trip, and he's going through his bag and his things. And I love that they bring in, like, the musical callback to Underneath the Mango Tree from Dr. No, and we get the From Russia with Love sting, and he's going through, like, these artifacts. It just really kind of creates a nice tie to those earlier films. Even though Bond looks different, we have a new actor, you feel like you're in that spy world. You feel like you're in Bond's universe again. And I think that's a really nice job to kind of pass the torch and really kind of carry on the hallmark legacy of James Bond. This setting is fantastic. We've got the Swiss Alps in Switzerland, very snowy environment, this massive compound, bunch of mysterious characters doing shady things. All of this leads into a badass ski scene. There's no campiness like we got in You Only Live Twice, where Bond is becoming Japanese. Everything is played very serious in this movie, and that really culminates with the finale of this film, which absolutely rocked my world. Spoilers if you haven't seen the movie. I do think it's worthwhile to not spoil the ending, so I'll leave it up to you. I'm going to talk about really the last sequence of this movie, and if you don't want that spoiled, turn this off now. But Bond really has this romantic relationship that develops with Tracy, who's very reluctant and kind of standoffish in the early parts of the movie, and you feel like Bond's gonna get his happy ending. He's found the woman he's gonna marry, he marries her, they're about to drive away off into their lives together. Like, Bond has found love, he's no longer gonna be jumping around between women. But what happens? Tracy gets shot as they're driving away. She dies in Bond's arms. I have goosebumps just thinking about it because the emotional impact of this scene was so good. And we get this really vulnerable moment of Bond just holding her, like saying everything's gonna be all right. She's just resting. And the movie ends. And that's the last we ever got of Lazenby as Bond. And it's just such a downer. It's such an emotional roller coaster, a memorable scene that we don't get in any of the previous or even to come Bond films. It treats things really serious. There are consequences to this dangerous license to kill espionage job that James Bond has. And in that moment of love and triumph, and you think you're going to get that happy ending, this movie has the balls to end on such an emotional, heart-wrenching, sad moment. I loved it. It was so good. This movie just blew me away. I did not know what to expect. Watching as many Bond films as I have already, it was like, all right, let's go. Another spy thriller. Where they going this time? Let's see old George do his one and done of the role. But I gotta tell you, like, he deserved to be James Bond for more films after this one. This is shot up in my rankings as one of my favorite James Bond movies, and I think it's because it's very stylized. It's got a great story. It's got great fight scenes. It's got a memorable chase scene. And it's got that awesome ending. So, highly recommend On Her Majesty's Secret Service. They don't pull any punches on this movie. They didn't need a fancy theme song. There's just an orchestrated theme song at the beginning of the movie. They didn't need all these fancy gadgets. We get Q right at the beginning of the movie. And there's not a whole lot of, like, cheesy gadgets in this movie. And just a tone that I don't think any other Bond film quite captures, which is what grabbed me. So, yeah, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, Tracy, Blofeld, Switzerland. It's a freaking cool movie. I really liked it. And I'm actually looking forward to rewatching this one again and just really taking in everything. So, thank you for watching. Happy to finally get this video out and share what I was left with watching it for the first time. Hit the like button, subscribe, comment your thoughts about On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and we're going to bounce back over to Sean Connery with Diamonds Are Forever next. Thanks for watching.